What is going on, everybody? It is Cam K, your wingman, back with you for another NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour here on GeForce TV. Well, we are almost at the end of the 2022 season, everybody. We finished round number 12 at CTMP, and it was the guy right to the side of me here, Marc-Antoine Cameron, who once again was the class of the field. Dominant car, dominant weekend once again, and of course it goes together with a dominant season. Obviously, it's a very great thing to have a solid season all year round, but to be able to wrap things up pretty well the weeks before the finale is definitely a right way to put the season to bed. The Pinty Racing team celebrating in what was a pre-championship celebration, coming off with another race victory, their third of the season, but you could argue that they could have had a lot more this year. Marc-Antoine Cameron had a breakout season in the number 96 after what has been a couple of years of, moderate success at 22 Racing. The change was made in the off-season to go on their own terms, and partnered with Chevrolet and Pinty, they have now become the top team in the NASCAR Pinty Series. A dominant performance all season long, the most laps led amongst everybody. It was a close battle between Kevin Lacroix and Cameron all season long, but a couple of bad races for Kevin Lacroix allowed the 2022 points leader to sneak away and make it pretty hard for anybody to beat him for the championship. In fact, it's been said, not officially from NASCAR, because obviously they're not going to make that announcement, but some of the best people out there when it comes to calculating the standings says all he has to do is start at Delaware and he is going to be the 2022 NASCAR Pinty Series champion. A long time for Marc-Antoine Cameron, a battle to come from the back of the field to the middle of the field to now the top of the field. And speaking with people in the team yesterday, they are absolutely ecstatic for this season. It was one of the best for them. Obviously, people can say what they will about how they got there, what happened behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, the car still has to be driven into first place. And that's what's happened. It was a remarkable weekend at CTMP once again. 26 NASCAR Pinty Series cars took to the track this weekend. Now that, once again, is a solid increase from what we saw last season. Now, hopefully, this will continue momentum into next year. We have a couple of race teams that showcased once again that they can play a role within this series despite not participating in every race weekend. And you know what? I think we're going to see a little bit more of them in 2023. And that's one of the things that we can talk about on this episode of the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour is the longevity of this series. Of course, with Pinty's at the helm for 5 more years, with some tracks signing on for multiple years after this year. I think it's in pretty good territory to say that this schedule is likely to stay the same. I don't think anything crazy is going to happen unless a track or a city was unable to host the series in 2023. I think there could be obviously some shuffling of when the races take place, but in terms of the tracks that are going to be utilized, I think we're going to be staying pretty well with what we've got. I don't think there's much change on the horizon there. We already know of a couple of tracks 100% that are back. They've already confirmed their race dates for next season. Obviously, some disappointment for a couple of people that were in the championship hunt, getting really close throughout the middle part of the season. But the 96 has just pulled away with the momentum of the last couple of weeks. And some parts failures, some disappointing results for other names like DJ Kennington, Alex Taglioni. If they had not had those, would it have mattered? Trayton Lapsovic's string of mechanical failures. One thing that was very noticeable is, yes, the 96 was the dominant car this year. Lots of laps led, lots of opportunity up front. But when it came to the faults that they had on race weekends, they weren't as catastrophic, it appears. The weekends that they struggled were weekends that their competitors also struggled. So it's one of those seasons that you have to put together all throughout race number 1 to race number 13. Now, there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about on this episode, of course, heading into next year. We've got still 2 weeks away. We've got Delaware Speedway, and Delaware, of course, being the season finale on the Sunday. Be pretty interesting to see what happens there. We know well where what happened last year with the NASCAR Pinty Series at Delaware. We had a Friday night show, and then we had a doubleheader on the Sunday, and it led to some pretty significant contact out on the racetrack, some arguments, some post-race shenanigans, and that was actually not the situation that I think we would have wanted to go out on. But 3 races on a short track, championship still hanging in the balance for some of the teams. It made total sense that that's what we were going to see. But now we've only got the 1 race, and there's not officially the title, I believe, out there yet for the Delaware finale, but we know it's the Pinty's Fall Brawl. It's going to be a definite battle for the second place in the championship right now. Obviously, first seems pretty well secured for the Paille Racing team in their first season. Now, I've talked to some other people at the racetrack this weekend, and I don't know whether or not we're going to see a 1-car effort here next year, or whether or not there is going to be a change of sorts to the field for Paille Racing. Whether or not they're going to take more stuff in-house. Obviously, this was a very successful first year for the 96. Could we see the 27 go in-house next year? Obviously, it was run out of WMI this year. It'd be very interesting to see what JC Paille has up his sleeve. Obviously, coming into this series was a big deal for him. I was lucky enough to get to chat with JC at the end of the race yesterday, and obviously he was very excited. But not only was he excited, he was also extremely excited for the future of the series, not just of his own team. One thing that he wanted to make sure that people knew is that there were some significant meetings taking place this week for the NASCAR Pinty Series. There's significant meetings for Chevrolet Canada being involved. They had some of the leaders of that organization in all of Canada at that race. This is not just a small thing anymore. This is a big deal. If they're bringing in some of the top CEOs, the top marketing officer for Chevrolet Canada, this could be a pitch that we haven't seen before. Something like getting manufacturer support would be huge back in this series, especially from a company like Chevrolet, when right now there is no factory support from Dodge, and there's no factory support from, we don't have Toyota, but there's no factory support from Dodge. So right now there's a definite opening that if they can bring in Chevrolet, and not only that, but you could have in some Chevrolet businesses that come on board, like we've seen in Hendrick Motorsports' case. There's a lot of opportunity for having Chevrolet affiliated businesses on your race car. GMS has had Chevrolet accessories on their race cars. I think that's definitely a possibility. You go back to the years with GM Goodwrench, longtime sponsor, so there's definite possibilities here. And to have meetings taking place and then have a Chevrolet Canada car in Victory Lane, this is a big deal here. And so hopefully, people are going to continue to push this series and continue to showcase, hey, this is not a fluke. Tim, how are you, buddy? This is not a fluke. This is something that we're trying to push here. I think having a company like Chevrolet behind the series for manufacturer support is nothing but a positive. The teams need this. I know it's hard to understand for a lot of reasons why we don't have manufacturer support. I don't really understand it myself. But for teams to be able to get those bonuses, that extra support for their equipment, to have actual branded materials from the manufacturer would help a lot. And we have a lot of Chevrolet teams. The best teams right now in this series are from Chevrolet. Paille Racing, 22 Racing, EHR, all a part of that. So, and will anybody make the change? That's going to be very interesting in the offseason, because right now, obviously, you have a lot of people that are still running the Dodges, the Dodge Challenger, but we know that the support is not there anymore. Hopefully, at some point, it'll come back, but with the discontinuation of the Challengers, I don't expect that you're going to see that anytime soon. That's obviously a major concern when you try to build this series. Now, obviously, there's people that are going to go, I never want to see a Toyota, I never want to see this, I never want to see that. But the reality is in Canada, we don't have a big three here. We have a lot of manufacturers. So you take a company like Nissan, for example, which has the Nissan Sentra Cup, and you have a stock car built by Nissan. Are we going to turn that away? I don't think that we would be in the position to do that. So obviously there's a situation there that you can look at. Obviously they haven't gotten into the stock car game, but it's entirely possible that we potentially head that way. I think that we've had a lot of support in this series in the past. Going back to NASCAR, obviously Ford was majorly involved. You even had Dave Whitlock in a Ford Quality Care car. So there's been times where we've had a lot of that manufacturer support. Unfortunately, it's just not here at the moment. The race on Sunday, buy on Monday, it just is not the mentality anymore. It's not the reality. People buy vehicles that they can afford, and they're not always the cheapest option. So by getting a company coming in and partnering with the series, it's something that we can push, something that will hopefully give some kickbacks to the teams and help out their weekly expenses. And even as simple as, I believe the Mopar Fast 5 was an award program they had in the series where you just got a couple extra bit of money. So I think that there's definite options there. So WeatherTech 200 took place 51 laps around Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Second time this year that the weather was very different on Sunday. It was very cold, as what you can say. It was cold, windy. Tim Gerald says, Toyota makes the Supra and the Xfinity stock car looks nothing like the real Supra. That tells me the door is wide open for almost any car to become a NASCAR stock car. It's very true. And for example, the Toyotas, there's been a mold made for the NASCAR Pinty Series. Like it was a thing. It just never materialized. So the other thing that you look at is, okay, look at the businesses that potentially you could have partner up with Toyota. Also, you'll also have, and this is the thing too, is dealerships, right? There's dealerships from Toyota in Canada that have sponsored on in the truck series down south, because we don't have a Toronto here. We don't have Toyota here. I would imagine, like, it makes no sense. It makes no sense why you're not going to get Canadian branches on the Canadian series where they could spend their money, where people here can actually purchase their vehicles. I know for the longest time, I think it was Don Valley North Toyota and Waynes Canada were on the 16 car or the 16 truck. And it's like, well, there's a lot of people up here that could use that. So if we can get Toyota to come into the series still, I know people will disagree, but Toyota has a huge presence here as well. Honda has a huge presence. So again, manufacturer support would be very, very big for this series. I think Nissan, you get somebody that Jim Haynes says the biggest deal would be for Chevrolet to market to attract new fans either in person or on TV and streaming, as that really costs huge money. It's absolutely true, Jim. The biggest thing that people have to remember here is streaming in this series is not what it is down south. And that's the biggest complaint that I see from people is, why isn't this on mainstream TV? Well, I'll tell you why it's not on mainstream. First off, the cost, and it's not on a market like it is in the United States. Remember, Fox, NBC, those are some of the big networks in the United States. Those are the ones that we get on our basic cable subscriptions, right? So it's widespread available for everybody. The issue right now is TSN is not available to everybody because we have only two manufacturers, two major companies that support cable and internet, which is Rogers and Bell, right? Well, you have TSN, which is a Bell supported network, and they're the ones that are going to have to foot the bill here. I think that the reality is we're not going to see it. If it's going to go ever to a point where it's mainstream streaming, it's not going to be on a just TSN4. It's going to more than likely be on a TSN2 or TSN3. It's not going to be on the main channel, and that no one would have that availability either. And then the only other option for them would be to take it to, say, a CTV, or a CTV2. Now, the likelihood, I would think, for streaming, if they're going to do like an online on TV, like, so they're going to take it to an actual broadcast, that's what you need. You need a channel that everybody has. And unfortunately, there really isn't a great option here that everybody does have. I think they're in their best case scenario right now, having an online streaming platform. I think right now, Flow Racing, people will have to get the hang of that, because it was different, because when we had Fans Choice, it was free. We didn't have to pay for that. And then NBC came along, took that, made it Track Pass. Then nobody had access to it again. And then Flow Racing's come on. So now you have to get Flow Racing. So it's really not, there's really not the best case scenario. And unfortunately, we're in an era now where you have to subscribe to a complete package if you want one thing. And that's the reality right now, is that you have to subscribe to be able to watch one NASCAR Pinty Series race. You only get the Pinty Series race. You don't get the qualifying. You don't get the practice. There's a lot of stuff that's changing. Someone like Matt Weaver, who has become influential in auto racing, has supported and pushed for more to watch/attend Pinty's races. We need more like him down the United States. Matt Weaver is somebody that I have a ton of respect for. Him and Joseph Srigley is also pushed it a lot from TobyChristie.com. And, Matt, we've had on the podcast, on the Stickers and Scuffs podcast, to talk about it. And, the one thing is, I understand what we're saying here by getting more people from the United States to view, but it's not a United States problem, because they're not the ones that are coming up to the races. It's important for the Canadian market, because it's not going to be a United States market that's going to push for broadcast. It is a Canadian market. And that's the issue right now, is that you need the Canadian numbers to be able to put the Canadian product on Canadian television. It's not going to go on American TV. It's not going to get wide enough right now. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of people that like it. I think this right now, this next period of time is going to be the most crucial. And I've said that for a couple of seasons here, that, they need to do this. But this time right now is very crucial, because now you're going to have a switchover. As we are aware, Tony Spiteri is coming in as a GM for NASCAR Canada. So NASCAR Canada now, the difference was, if you go back, so a little bit of history, back to when it was NASCAR, they had their own team that dealt with it. When NASCAR came in, my understanding is that there is a NASCAR team down south that oversees the team up here. That, I believe, is going away. At least that's my understanding. Is that team from down south is no longer overseeing up here. It's going to be completely operated, ran, and functioned completely through Canadians. That's how this series needs to work. Because you cannot have people from the United States that aren't involved in the series, that aren't following it 24/7, making the calls, right? This is a great move. I think having somebody in charge that knows the market, that knows companies within Canada, that knows the competitors, that knows the people within the management team as well, being in charge and helping promote the product is only going to improve things. So Jim, for me, Flow is cheap overall and it has much. Tim says, racing fans will watch good racing content from anywhere. It's absolutely true, Tim. The biggest issue for people is just finding how to access it. And we're doing as much as we can on the page by showing you, hey, go to this place. Hey, go to this place. If you want to shell out the money, that's on you. Okay, the reality is this is what the future is. It's about subscribing to different places to find the content because they're not open to sharing it anymore for free. That's the reality. That will eliminate the detachment. It's true. It's true. The detachment right now, Tim, is very evident, right? By having somebody in charge, by having people here that know the series the most, it's only going to benefit. And I think there's going to be some changes. I've been told that there's going to be changes made. Whether that's to the competition, to the cars, whether that's to the rules, I'm not 100% sure. All I've been told is that there is change coming. We can look forward to change. As far as I know, though, the schedule is one of the things that is not changing. As far as I know, like I said, there can be stuff that happens in the off season that causes stuff to change. But as far as I know, as GP3R, that's staying. Oshweekend, that's staying. CTMP, I can't see any reason that either one of those would go. Oshweekend, we already know is staying. Newfoundland is staying. So really your questionings are around maybe Toronto, Sunset, Delaware. But again, I can't see Delaware moving. I can't really see Sunset going anywhere either. iCar, I can't. As far as I know, that's still coming back. So Chaudier, you don't see that. Edmonton, I don't see that. So I think a lot of this stuff is going to stay. Whether we improve from 13 to 14 races, maybe we go 15 races, I don't know. I don't know if it's even possible right now. But let's get into, before we continue on, because we could go on for hours talking about that, let's talk about the results here. This was a tough race, mechanical-wise, for a lot of teams. So we had 26 entries, and you know what? That is a solid field. Now, if we can get to 30, Tim, BC, so Nova Scotia, I can see happening. I can see them doing a return in Riverside. I can see that. I cannot see going to BC yet. The one thing we have to remember is that BC's kind of main attraction now is the RS1 series. And they do 4 races out in BC in Penticton, and then they have the 2 races at Area 27. I don't know if Pinty's is in this comfortable position to go out there yet. I would think, yeah. So Wes says Nova Scotia would happen if maybe Riverside wanted to do a weekday show. Even if you're going to have to do something like that, because I think the way to do it is to go. You've already got funding for the race in Newfoundland because the government, the tourism department, the Newfoundland Come Home Tour, they're supporting that. And they're still supporting it as next year. Now, the least amount of money that's being put into it is in its 3rd season. So, obviously, next year it'll be a little bit less than it was this year, as far, again, as my understanding. Yeah, I would say, Tim, that's the way to go. If you're going to do it, do a Riverside, Newfoundland back-to-back type of thing, like the same week, if they're going to do it. I know that things were a little bit tough in Newfoundland with rental cars and getting people there, but it's definitely a possibility. And if they were going to, like Tim, we know the drivers love that racetrack. Absolutely love it, love it, love it. The fans love it. There's no question that Riverside would be welcomed back in a heartbeat. I know people really love the ownership. They love the track. So it would be a simple. I would love it back personally. I love that track so much. And it was really sad that it's not back, but we could see it. Hopefully, it all depends. Again, it comes down to money here. But 26 drivers, mechanical issues took out Alex Gannett early. Winner at GP3R, 3rd place at iCar. So unfortunately, his solid runs on the podium come to an end early. TJ Renamoto, actually saw him get out of his car. They brought the fire extinguishers out. Unfortunately, it went kaboom on his car. Ryan Kloot, not sure exactly what the official diagnosis was with Ryan Kloot. Unfortunately, he was out. Another disappointing finish for Mark Dilley, unfortunately, because of mechanical issues. He was out of the car early. Brett Taylor had an incident on the racetrack. They had to replace a part. Matthew Scannell we'll talk about. Brian Cathcart, solid 20th place run, just stayed out, had some fun. Wallace Stacy, Brent Weller. Weller, of course, only makes a couple of starts each season, so a solid 18th place for him. Glenn Stiers, 17th. Ray Jr. Quartermash in what we would expect to be his final race of the year. 16th place, we should expect to see Rafael Lessard in that car at Delaware. LP Montour, not expecting to see him that low, actually. He's kind of struggled in his last 2 starts, so a disappointing finish for the 13 car. A little bit of contact with some people out there. Larry Jackson had an accident, shifted the rear end over. Okay, so I missed a comment here. Let's see. Chad Duxbury. NLL had similar issues with broadcasting. They went to TSN and made a deal. I personally know many people who now subscribe to TSN just for that. Tim, too bad for Scannell, had a hell of a run going. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. Don't you worry there, Tim. Larry Jackson shifted the rear end over, yet still finished in 14th place. Dexter Stacy finished 3rd in the spring. Unfortunately, I talked to him after the race yesterday. He said he just couldn't get the car right. It was just a struggle all weekend. So 13th place. Daniel Bois, also talked to him after the race. He got spun 3 times in this race, got up to the top 5 at least once, but unfortunately just contact once again. Brandon Watson, a solid improvement. He is getting better on the road courses in 11th place. And JP Bergeron, how about that, a 10th place finish. One guy who deserves one hell of a shout out this season is Sam Fellows. Now, Sam Fellows and Jim Bray Racing do not have the budget of the big teams out there. Not even close. Not in terms of personnel, parts, anything. And Sam Fellows brought this car home in a top 10. He deserves one hell of a shout out. And they're building momentum. And I think that that's a fantastic thing to see. That Jim Bray Racing team is definitely improving week in and week out with Sam Fellows. And he is getting better week in and week out. So look to see what he can do. Andrew Ranger. Odd. Andrew Ranger just not really a factor all weekend. He got up there, but really struggled. Tim, 61 car, Brent Weller had something going up in turn 5, was driver on left on the curbing way too many times when I was on there. Fellows improved all weekend, great showing. He really has. He's got improved all season, Tim, and I really hope he's back again next year because I think he's showing us that he's got a lot more in the tank here. Andrew Ranger, like I said, I don't know if it's a WMI thing or if it's Ranger, but we talk with him, and he's just happy to be there. And you know what? For a guy that's had his struggles, Andrew is so upbeat and so happy, and you can tell he's so thankful to be there, and he's such a great guy. So, and such a great ambassador for our series, and really Andrew Ranger could have gone elsewhere. He could have tried sports cars. He could have tried this. He could have tried that. But the reality is he's stuck it out here. And I'm really glad that he has, because he's shown that you can make a go of it in this series. And I would put him up there as probably one of the best in our series. Alex Tagliani, DJ Kennington really didn't get up there much in the race. Trayton Lapsevich had a very exciting event for him. Pitted outside of the box, got a 1-lap penalty, got that lap penalty back, and finished in 5th place. He was driving a little pissed off towards the end, and that's what you want to see. He was great coming up through the field. And Trayton, again, this is something you want to watch because he's improving at the right time. Towards the end of the season here, he's getting there. He's showing. Hi, Rick and Terry. Happy birthday, Terry. I want to see what Trayton does in his 3rd year, because we always talk about the sophomore slump, but what's happening now is Trayton's starting to get a little bit more that momentum coming back. I mean, one out of us weekend. Icar maybe wasn't still as the greatest result for him, but this was a solid one for him. Alpi Dumoulin, just a tough year. And I don't know if it's just the change in crew or what, but LP is just he's just kind of been there this year, and I think that's not going to stay. I think we're going to see him back to normal pretty quickly. Gary Clute had a solid weekend all weekend long. Started 2nd, finished 3rd. Just didn't get up there and didn't have the car to be able to get up into the lead. Kevin Lacroix got up, led a little bit, but was no match for the 96 of Marc-Antoine Cameron. The GM Paillet team pretty much wraps up the championship here. It's not officially the championship over yet, but it is pretty well close. It's been a solid season, however, for Kevin Lacroix. We knew DJ Kennington was in for a tough battle here, having to go on these road courses and compete with the top of the guys, but they've improved. And I think you can talk to his crew chief, Rick Verburn. They found something here, because when he was here earlier in the season, he struggled. They had a parts failure at iCar, but he had started, up in second place. He was going to have a good race. Hard to say what would have happened if that parts issue did not take place. But again, I think we've seen DJ come back to championship-esque material for him. He is again. It's like he hasn't been doing this for years and years and years. He's come back and been really, really strong. Now, as we head into this final race weekend at Delaware Speedway, now there is something wrong with the graphic. It's actually 12 of 13 races that are completed. Rick says, getting better on the road course program, a ways to go yet. But Rick, there is a solid improvement, way more competitive, I think, this weekend than maybe in the spring. I think that one thing that we can say about Rick and DJ's team is they have a lot of competition against them now. Tim says, I briefly chatted with Mac on Saturday, and he was concerned with the big picture, and the points looked like his concerns were unwarranted. One thing that is interesting about Mark and JC, even after winning this race, they still said, we're not sure. We're going to focus first still at the final race. We're still battling. We're still thinking. And, one thing is no matter what the circumstance, I think, this season, it's going to finish. It's going to be over. And as soon as the checkered flag drops at Delaware, you can best bet that every single one of these competitors is looking to next year and what they can do to continue to improve. I think, and I don't know if it was the paint scheme this year that brought DJ to life, but, him and Rick really put in a lot of effort. We had the pleasure of talking to Rick and talking to DJ on the Stickers and Scuffs podcast, and this was the first kind of year for them together. And that's, I think, something important to note as well, is that Rick, worked with Andrew Ranger, and now he's working with DJ Kennington. So they got to win this year. I think that's a big thing for them. Now, they could get a second win. He was pretty damn good last year at Delaware Speedway. So now we're heading back to Delaware Speedway, where we know that we know that he's good at Delaware Speedway. And the thing is that I look at this and go, okay, personally, if it were me, I want to see 2 races at Delaware. That's just my opinion, because I love that track. But there's so many people that could win at Delaware at the final race. You seriously, Andrew Ranger has won. They won there last year with Rick Verburn, actually. And Rick says, yeah, our first full year together, we will build on it. I mean, 3rd place in the points right now is not bad for your first season together. And it can only go up, you'd think, right? Naturally. If you're doing that well right off the start. I mean, it's the same thing with Cameron McCluskey, right? You start off with a brand new relationship. That's a lot to change. And we've seen it with LP Dumoulin, right? LP had to get used to a new crew chief this year as well. So no matter what people say, that does make a difference. Cameron leading 33 points. The battle is going to be really for second place in the point standings, 33, 34, and 36. Lacroix, Kennington, and Tagliani. Either way, this is a solid finish for the points for Lacroix, Kennington, Tagliani. Obviously, it's disappointment for, in my opinion, Delaware has become the track in Southern Ontario. Am I correct? I would say so, Tim. That's my opinion. I think it's fantastic. I think what they've done with their weekly program there is showing that track is now the finale. That can't change. Even if Jukasa were to come back, I understand the prestige behind it, but I think there's a lot more that's benefiting Delaware right now. Gary Calling, the man, is here. I'm surprised, Gary, you're here, man. You guys would have been busy out there at Flamborough Speedway with the Pot of Gold 300. Was it 300? I don't know why I said 300, but the pot of gold for 50K. So definitely a lot of fun at Flamborough Speedway, which I'd still love to see come back to this series as well. But I got to throw out, obviously, Flamborough Speedway going to be hosting the Ontario Sportsman Series finale this weekend. Unfortunately, a track has closed, so the Ontario Sportsman Series will have to, swap things out, and we'll do 240 lappers at Flamborough Speedway instead. It was 300 laps. Okay, I thought so. So Tagliani there. Trayton Lapsevich, 5th place. I'd say that that's a solid finish for him despite all the bad luck he had. Andrew Ranger, 50 points behind in 6th place. LP Dumoulin, Brandon Watson, Gary Cluton, JP Bergeron. Really not going to see much change, I think, in the bottom half of the top 10 in points here. Dexter Stacey sits just out in 11th. And Mark Dilley, 12th. So we're going to talk about one of these situations that took place on the racetrack. Obviously, we're going to go back to the results here. Now, Matthew Scannell finished in 23rd place. I am going to go out here and say that Matthew Scannell did not deserve a 23rd place finish. I've been lucky enough to chat with Matthew quite a bit, and he is a very, very talented road course driver. Very, very talented. And he's now routinely showed it at CTMP. He showed it even in Toronto, that he can run towards the top 10, top 5. In this race, he was as high as 3rd. There was contact with the 18 car of Tagliani that caused him to make contact and hit the wall. And all I can say is that after the race, Matthew made sure that Tag knew he was not happy. He went straight up to him and told him exactly how he felt. And I have no issues with rubbing in racing. I have issues with dumping in racing. I didn't see the wreck, so I'm not going to comment on that aspect of it. What I am going to go and say is that there's a big difference between Tagliani and Scannell in terms of what they have in terms of sponsorship. For a guy like Matthew Scannell, that was a career run for him. Career run. Doesn't have a lot of money, doesn't have a lot of sponsorship. They bust their butt with Larry Jackson putting their equipment together, and to have a car wrecked after having a career race for no real reason is disappointing. It's heartbreaking to see that, because, and I'm talking about this because I know them personally. It's different as a fan, and I will admit that, because it's easy as a fan to get upset at who spun who, the person that wrecked this person. It's very, very easy to take one side or the other. And in the spring, we saw that. We saw a lot of comments towards Kevin Lacroix after he and Gary Clute made contact. I can tell you that as somebody that was a fan and still is a fan, but has started to do more and more behind the scenes type stuff, get to know the driver. Get to know them, because it changes your perspective. Listen to what they have to say. Because what's one thing that we see in racing a lot of the times is people jump to conclusions about people's personalities and the way they are. I think that in this circumstance, there is no real winner, because at the end of the day, somebody got wrecked, somebody's unhappy about it, and the team that gets wrecked, unfortunately, has to pay for it. That's the reality of the situation. It's a tough deal. And because when you have those feelings for drivers and teams, and you know how much they put into it, it's easy to get very upset about it. But at the same time, you're not behind the wheel. You're not the one that's making the judgment calls. It's not up to us to dictate what was supposed to happen there. That's the reality. So while I feel for Matthew and I feel for Tag, it's a sucky situation. We saw it exactly the same at Delaware last year. And it happened multiple times in the races at Delaware last year. With the 8 and the 22 last year, Cameron and Gemmel. You have one way you can feel about it, or you can feel another way about it, or you say, it's happened. It's over. They talked about it. They did what they needed to do. And in this case, I applaud Scannell for telling him how he felt. That's what you do. We've seen it. Now it's over. And you kind of, if those two are going to do something about it afterwards, that's up to them. But it's not up to the fan base. It's not up to us to say, oh, he should go and do this or he should go and do that. It is. It's hard, like Tim says here, to stay objective, not personal. And unfortunately, people do tend to take it personally. They do. And the only person that should be taking it personally are the people that are in that team or the driver. If they feel it was a personal attack, then that's how they feel about it. We see it time and time again in racing. That is just how it happens. Now we head to Delaware, and the reality is Delaware is going to probably be a big field. I'm only hearing rumblings, okay? But it sounds like there could be a couple of additional cars at Delaware Speedway. And that's normal. Like normally what we see, it's your last chance to play for the year in the NASCAR Pinty Series. There's options and opportunities. You have weekly racers at Delaware Speedway that run week after week after week that could rent a ride potentially. We know the championship's kind of already settled as it is here. But what you can definitely say is that there's people that want to be given an opportunity or want to take a risk in heading into next year, maybe get that opportunity that they've got that little bit of extra money to run and finish out this year. So right now I expect if we're going to see our normal players at Delaware, I think you're going to see the 61 out there. I think Brent Weller we can expect is going to be there. Matthew Kingsbury, it says on the Enduro King Autosport page that they were originally they're planning Delaware, so maybe he'll be there. I'm not 100% sure if he is. Maybe we see a second Dumoulin competition car. We don't know. I don't know exactly what the plan is in terms of DGM, whether Alex Labay is available. I'd love to see Alex Labay come in and race for the finale at Delaware. That would be great. Obviously, Gannett, I think, would be somebody else. I don't know if they've got a oval car for him to use because he's only run the road courses this year. But a Rafael Lasar we expect, Donald Teague we expect back. I think you'd obviously see the RGC Sports guys. I'm curious if we'd see Jake Sheridan because Jake, we know he got to run earlier this year. He runs weekly out of he's not weekly, but he runs the late models out of Delaware Speedway, right? So that would be somebody I would think if he's going to. Tim, I would think Kyle Steckley is another one. Kyle runs weekly late models at Delaware Speedway. So he's somebody else I think that you could definitely see. If we're talking rentals out of Delaware, I'm going to say Ray Morneau would be somebody if they've got the funding. He's in the lead for the championship out there. Joe Lawrence would always be somebody that I think would be really cool to go out and get that opportunity. We know, obviously, the 28 car I don't know if Rick is still watching, but I don't know if the 28 car is rented out for Delaware Speedway. I would think that if somebody's local and they wanted to rent it out, that would be an opportunity for them. Obviously, EHR, I don't know what's happening with the 3 car. Brett Taylor has already said that CTMP was his final race of the season, and he doesn't know what his future holds. So, I'm very interested to see if the 3 car is being rented out for this weekend at Delaware, this upcoming weekend at Delaware. Let's see. Tim Jarrell, Gary Collins says J.R. Fitzpatrick. Oh, I would love that. Tim says, Kyle and Jake have been really good at Delhi this year. They really have. Jim says, the biggest thing about adding to the schedule is that they have to be promoted to fans. So have to be promoted and fans show up, as you don't want any failures to add races. Yep, absolutely. Gary says, love to see him in again. Who wouldn't want to see the final NASCAR champion come back? And he's been really good this year. I want to see Rick Spencer Walt in one of these cars. Rick Spencer Walt's a badass. I want to see him do this. Rick Verburn, nothing confirmed yet, but a few inquiries. Now, I'm hoping that we see somebody like a Michael Herniak Jr. from the OSS series. Local Windsor kid, so I'd hope he get an opportunity. I know that they can link. I can link them with DJ. I know that DJ ran a car for them at OSS in the OSS series, so maybe there's some history there. But I definitely think that 61's going to be there. I'm pretty certain because he was there last year. I think they've already confirmed that he's going to run there. So I don't know where we are in terms of numbers. I've been literally rattling off a whole bunch of car numbers right now. But, if we get to 25, 26 cars at Delaware Speedway, oh my gosh, everybody watch out. Now, that's not saying that we couldn't see a huge surprise and say Chantel Kalika or Jamie Krizik come from out west to come and run the finale. We saw it at Jukasa. I think Krizik and Chantel have done that in the past. Second Jim Bray car, maybe. So, again, I'm throwing a lot of numbers out here, throwing a lot of possibilities. The reality is it all is about the money. It's all about whether or not people are going to be able to afford to get out there and do it. But I know there's a lot of names that people want to see. Like I said, the Jake Sheridans. We've said J.R. Fitzpatrick. Obviously, you're going to have the APC series guys there as well. So APC and Superstocks. So like Elaine Zardo, Garrett Teamersma. Like there's names there that if I were EHR, throw a flyer, put a flyer in. If you've got the Fast Eddie North Country property maintenance car, put Elaine Zardo in there. Put a Garrett Teamersma in there. Get them, get a young driver a huge opportunity. Ray Morneau. I don't know about Shea though, Gary, because Shea left that team. Didn't come back to that team this year, and North Country Property was his sponsor, right? So I don't know if that would be a case, but I also look at there could be some connections still there because APC Canusa sponsors Shea, but they were on the 3 car at Oshweekend. So maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 2 APC sponsored cars at the Delaware race. Kyle Steckley, if he's going to be in it, and then you have Shea Gemmel. Absolutely, I could see that being a possibility. I would love to see it. And who knows what we see from the RGC sports team, White Motorsports. Did they add another one? I absolutely agree with you, Tim. I think Ray Morneau Jr. would be a great addition. I think you put him in the 3 car since he drives the 03 already. That would be a cool chance to see him run in it. I mean, it means so much for that family as well for him to be running out there. This is the cool and exciting thing about getting to do this show is talking about who could possibly join this series in the future. And we know that the racing scene in Quebec is healthy, and I think in Ontario it still needs a lot of work. Dave Bailey back on asphalt, that would be crazy to see. Maybe they bring the 36 car out for him to do a run on the oval. That would be kind of cool as well. I've heard another team potentially that has run this season that could come back out and run. Actually, I think 2 of them at least that we haven't mentioned yet. So if we get 26 cars for the finale here, that would be a fantastic finish for this season. And when we go back to Sunset last year when we had 18 starting to finish this season with 20, potentially 26. Like that's the type of growth we're talking about. Like this is fantastic. Now what things are very important is cars need to be built in the off season. We're going to need they're going to need support, going to need sponsorship. The biggest thing, obviously, is getting the support. And as Jim said earlier, is promoting properly the series and promoting who's going to be there, promoting the series, the drivers. What we know is that there's a lot of social media presence that is starting to get recognized. We're starting to see a lot more of it. RGC Sports is definitely on board with that. They're starting to do a lot of social media stuff. Sam Fellows is doing social media stuff. Paye and Dumoulin Competition. Festidrag does an amazing job. I agree with you, Tim. I think JR on an 03 wrap would look fantastic for EHR. I think it would be so cool. I don't know if they'll do it, but I would love to see that. I think that would be a really cool, or even just a Jack Monahan throwback, Tim, would be really cool to see. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. So there's options here, guys. Like, we're talking about this, but we know that the Quebec contingent of drivers is very strong. Their sponsorship is very strong. Their racing is very strong. Their support in Quebec is so big. Where we need the help is in Ontario in terms of sponsorship that's able to take people to the next level, able to support them in the NASCAR Pinty series, in the APC series, in the OSS series, in the Super Stocks, the Quick Super Stocks, Can-Am Midgets. Literally, there's so many places that need that, but so many racing divisions too. So it makes it a little bit hard. More of a dream, but yeah, cool. It would be, but you never know, right, Tim? If they go and find a big manufacturer of tractors or excavating equipment that wants to partner up with them. I've done a Caterpillar fictional before. I think that would be a really cool opportunity if Caterpillar Canada came on board or something along those lines. So heading into next year, like we're talking, we still got one more race here, but this show was not ending when the season ends. One thing that we've talked about a lot on our podcast with Graydon on the Stickers and Scuffs podcast is that seasons don't have to end when the checkered flag flies. You can continue the hype and continue to build and talk with people and try and keep the hype going in next year and attract some of those companies that we really would like to see. Continue to thank people that put on the shows for us this year. I think, like I said, there's going to be a lot of things to look forward to. And one of the things that I was able to do this past weekend at CTMP was talk with the new GM of NASCAR Canada, Tony Spiteri, and talk to him and kind of what he sees this upcoming season and what we have going into next season, what we could potentially have. So we have Tony Spiteri here, officially the new GM, I guess we're calling you.
Yes,
GM,
sir.
Grand Poobah.
Grand Poobah.
The big man in charge of the NASCAR Pinty Series. Tony, let's talk about this season. What are your thoughts on it, and how's the outlook for next year?
Wow. I mean, amazing season, Cam. You've been to the majority of our races and covering majority of them. It's been a phenomenal season. Some breakthrough performances. Marc-Antoine Cameron, for example. Trayton Lapsovich on the dirt track. I mean, storylines all the way around. But yeah, I mean, 2023 for us has really started about 2 months ago, let's just say, from a planning perspective. And from what I see so far, I'm pretty excited about what could lay in store for us.
So if we're continuing to grow the fan base, is there stuff that you're hoping to achieve for next year?
Well, I think there's a whole bunch of objectives. I mean, I think one of the key objectives for us is the continued integration of not just new tracks or new venues, but new forms of entertainment. I mean, as you know, we're obviously in the racing business first and foremost, but we are in the entertainment business. And I think the feedback that we've got from both our road course performances as well as our dirt performance has proven that our fan base is pretty robust and it's pretty diverse. So look to us, especially in 23, to continue to expand that.
So what's your excitement level?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
Let's go to 10.
Let's go to 10. Well, normally I'm like an 11 or 12 when I'm at the racetrack, but I got to tell you, between the France family and the whole crew at NASCAR, ever since the announcement, I'm probably around a 17 or an 18. The amount of support they have for the Canadian marketplace it really is overwhelming.
Awesome. Well, Tony, thank you for taking some time for me, and we can't wait for next year. He gets it. He gets it. One thing I appreciate about Tony Spiteri is that he gets what we need. He listens and he's listened for quite a while. Gary calling with some big questions here. Tim Gerald's also mentioned here. He says, Tim says, I was driving home on the 401 from CTMP and passed the one-car hauler heading west and noted most of the many sponsors were French, probably Quebecois. Yeah, they are. There's only a couple of contingency sponsors that are Dave's that are still on the car, but everything else comes from JP and JP's team, Festi Drag Development, and Martin D'Anjou does an amazing job promoting the Quebec racers. And that's what we're trying to do here is, I mean, one of the things that I've said for a long time is we have to have people like Martin in Ontario because we need people to get that big support and get companies interested in a part of it. Gary says, what do you think about next year? Should NASCAR focus more in Ontario but still do all the other tracks? Do you think the teams could afford a full schedule plus 20 plus races? Gary says, I think Tony will do good things for NASCAR. I agree 1,000% on Tony doing great things. Do I think they can afford a full schedule? Absolutely not. I don't think they can really afford it now. If it were me, obviously I would say yes because I love it. What my belief here, Gary, is NASCAR should utilize as much Ontario as they can because let's be honest here, and I know this is not going to be a popular thing from the Quebec fans, and I completely understand it, but the reality is the Quebec series drivers have a lot of support. They really do. They have a ton of promotional support. They get a ton of assistance. Ontario really struggles, and I think somebody like JC Payet, he knows that, he sees that, and he's trying to help. After talking with him about it, the reality is, I think that if they are going to do it, it would have to be at the expense of some of the farther tracks. Like I know that's not what people want to say, what they want to hear, but the reality is that companies aren't going to want to sponsor something that they don't have business in. So if you're an Ontario business, you're not going to sponsor a race in Quebec because you don't do business there. You're not going to make any money from people seeing your business out there. That's the reality. If you have a company that is Canada-wide, then it's not as big of a deal. But you get something like let's take Queensway Truck Center for Brent Weller. Well, it does no business for him to go out to GP3R because he can't sell his business out there. He can sell his business in Ontario. Now, if it's me, I still believe, and it's not just because I do the work for OSS, but the way that CASCAR had the CASCAR series and the CASCAR Sportsman series made it like it was CASCAR Junior. It was a championship that's still dedicated to Ontario racetracks. Yes, they did occasionally go out to Quebec as well, but it was an Ontario-only series. Now, in my belief, that's the series that if NASCAR can, not NASCAR in general, but if we can help get that series a little bit more oomph, a little bit more standing, some more support, some more assistance, that can help with car counts. That can also help those guys like the Brent Wellers, the Brian Cathcarts, the people that maybe can't afford to go all the way out and race out there. Larry Jackson, perfect example, where they might be a 13th to 14th place car in the NASCAR Pinty series, but say they're going out west that weekend, he can't make it out there because of the cost is too extreme. Well, he can still go and run the Ontario Sportsman Series race at, say, Flamborough or Peterborough and potentially win the race. So there's options there. The problem is it's the exposure and trying to get the TV, the streaming. There's a whole other can of worms there. And that's unfortunately what part of the problem is that there is so many places that need those sponsors, yet unfortunately it is a hard thing to get and to ask a company for stupid amount of money. And that's what I've been told is it is a stupid amount of money. So things that have to change would be purses. They would be schedules. They would be cost of tires. They would be payouts. It's entirely possible that People will not be able to afford to come back next year. That is the reality. There's a reason why people couldn't go and run the full season this year, and it's because it was too expensive. Obviously, you add in gas things. Well, if I'm NASCAR, I'm going to Canadian Tire and saying, hey, we can't ask for a multi-million dollar, we can't go out and get a multi-million dollar investment from you. If you guys don't want to, if you're not able to do that. But how about you guys donate a couple hundred gas cards? Gas is a big thing for these teams. There you go. Where or how do you think teams can find sponsorship if everyone's different? The same. That's the problem, Gary, is that they can't. That's the problem, Gary, is there isn't. People keep trying to go back to the same well over and over and over. I mean, after a while, there's not going to be enough money. Quick, Castrol, there's only so many places that you can go to get the same amount of money. And they can't sponsor everybody. We've seen what happened with Camping World in the Truck Series. You can go and dip your toe in as many people as possible, but the problem is that after a while you go, oh my gosh, I spent all this money. But it's the same pie, just cut it differently. Gas cards or cash. Again, at the same time, you got to see what you can get, right, Tim? If they're not willing to shell out money, but they'll say, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll give you gas cards because we know that way you're going to be using our gas." So how do we get past this to find new money? It's a hard sell, Gary. It really is. I think the reality is people got to look wherever. And that's the hardest thing. I mean, go places that you don't think would be interested. I think that's the hardest sell. Is there's not one answer, right? You have people that have to put in the time. And unfortunately, it is so hard because all the racetracks are in the same boat. The racetracks have to find money. They have to find race sponsors. The teams have to do it. The series has to do it. It is not an easy thing in 2022 to get sponsorship like that. The problem is that we're not going to get to that point right now because in Canada, one of the things that we're up against is we're not going to be a national sport. If you are the Maple Leafs, no problem getting money. Raptors, no problem getting money. Non-endemic sponsors, non-racing are where it's at. But you're right, Tim. It is. It's difficult. And that's the thing is I think a lot of people are just unprepared on how much you have to do. There's PowerPoint presentations. You have to have marketing materials. You have to have sponsorship decks. You have to have numbers. You have to have all this information because businesses nowadays won't just cut you a check because you're a nice guy. And I think that still is the expectation. I think there's people that go and say, well, if I shake hands and I talk with this person, they're going to cut me a check and expect nothing from me. And that's not how it works. You have to fight for it. It is. It's extremely hard. And I know exactly what it's like. It's tough because we've had to try and find sponsors just for our podcast. The people don't want to do something for nothing. They don't want to give you anything anymore. It's not getting their sticker on a race car means nothing. There needs to be something that comes out of it, whether it's marketing options, whether it's stuff to play with, whether it's ratings. It's a tough sell. And every series is in the same boat. Every driver's in the same boat. And unfortunately, it gets cutthroat. And that's the reality. We're coming back, I think, from it. But what we need is people to spread the word. Is people to go out and buy merchandise for the teams. Contact these. If you know somebody that's a CEO of a company, just throw it out there. Ask. One thing, it doesn't hurt to ask because you never know I didn't sell a sponsorship, but I got a sponsor for a driver this past year. And all I did was ask. And they thanked me for thinking of them, but then thought we can never afford this. I said, there's options. There's options. I think Tony has the idea we need to think of it as entertainment, just not racing. You're selling a product, Gary. It's not as simple as just it's racing. No. It's merchandise. It's promotion. It's this. It's that. And I think as well, race events, not just one event. It has to be multiple. You've got to have 3 or 4 companion events. Like we've seen, concerts, contests, celebrities, making it worth the trip. Tim, COVID has made it worse, but the issue was already there. It absolutely was. It absolutely was. And I think how many people would see on the grid here if there wasn't personal businesses and personal relationships involved? If you didn't have TJ Renamoto, if you didn't have JC Paillet, if you didn't have Castrol, if you didn't have Scott Steckley, like the amount of cars automatically dips. So there's a lot that we can continue to grow on here, but obviously it's an off-season debate. It is something that we need to continue to do. Showcase this series, showcase racing in Canada, Ontario. We're not going to get help from the government like in North Carolina. We're not going to get that. So we've got to do whatever we can to continue to help. And I want to thank each and every one of you that has tuned in today for the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour. We've got so much. We've got so much that we can continue to do here. Helping those small tracks, helping the small series, eventually build the ladder up. NASCAR Pinty Series, make it the top. Have APC as the top late model series, top stock car series as the NASCAR Pinty Series. Those are your 2 branches, similar to what you see. There's either IndyCar or NASCAR Cup Series. You've got your ladder systems there. You got Super Stocks, OSS, branching into NASCAR Pinties. You've got your late model divisions at weekly racetracks. I'd say Delaware is probably the highest up there. Then you've got your midget series. Then you've got Oscar Hot Rods and the modified. So you've got all sorts of these racing divisions. Bring them under one umbrella. You're correct. Weekend deals shorten the days for the teams. Absolutely. Make it not a big mess. Give them the opportunity. If people don't want to be here, they'd leave. You've got people that want to be at the racetrack, that want to see as much as possible. I'm not going to spend a $70 ticket for one race. I better be seeing 4 or 5. That's what people believe. Allow people to see practice sessions again. Allow people to see qualifying. That has to happen. You have to be able to allow to see everything that takes place, because that's how you build. More of this type of stuff. More of this. We need more social media presence. We need more podcasts, more visual and video off efforts. I would say if you go build on the hour broadcast, make it an hour and a half. I don't know if TSN will go for that, but we've had hour long for a long time. It's marketing to sell the products and get people to the track, and the series job to keep them coming. Again, sure, you can say it's the series job, Jim, but at the same time, series can only do so much. It's also the fans that have to make sure that they do that, right? That's the biggest thing. I think we have a wave of people that want to see success coming this way. We can continue to do that. I know it's easy to say that NASCAR's got to do it, NASCAR's got to do it. Well, the reality is we've seen it for a long time, is that the investment hasn't been there. We know that NASCAR has, down south, that this isn't their priority. Let's be honest. We know that, right? It can't be. Their job is to sell the Cup Series, That's what we do. Gary Calling, I love you, buddy. I hope to be out there at Flamborough. I really do want to go and see the OSS finale. I don't have a ride yet, so I'm hoping I'll be able to go out there because I want to get some footage for the finale. But that's it, guys. We did an overrun because we were just so in depth in conversation today. I really appreciate it all, everybody. You guys have yourselves a great week. we'll be back to talk our Delaware preview, of course, and then of course we'll be going a couple episodes each and every week. Maybe not every week following the end of the season, but we'll definitely be here all throughout. I really appreciate you guys sticking around for the NASCAR Pinty Series. Make sure you follow us on GeForce. Make sure you also follow the NASCAR Pinty Series on all the social media. The Stickers and Scuffs podcast each and every week. We're going to have Brandon Feeney on the show tomorrow. So definitely make sure you come out and see us then. Gary calling, I have 29 kindergarten children looking for me tomorrow. Well, have fun, Gary. I can say I don't have to worry about that anymore. So have a good day, everybody. We really appreciate it. And